have always felt a strong connection to the chairman, Fred Hampton.
Be anywhere, but when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am
the cultural boost and fire necessary for us to continue the mission. I think that once you get reparations and give people the tools necessary, give people the opportunity necessary, it will do something to the spirit and the psyche of the people. And then that will start to revolutionize, and that will start to get people to develop other solutions.
One of the lies that we tell ourselves is that we are making progress. We tend to equate progress with concessions. We can no longer make that mistake. See, it's no in-between. You're either free or you're a slave. There's no such thing as second-class citizenship. But a lot of you running around talking about you Democrats, and the Democrats got you in the biggest trick going. When black people become serious about the revolutionary struggle that they are caught up in, whether they recognize it or not, when they begin to go down and knock off people who are oppressing them, that's when the revolutionary struggle unfolds. Not until.
To educate, regulate, and demonstrate. Educate the youth, regulate the truth, and demonstrate the proof. And today, family, I have a very special guest with me. I got my brother Afro Elite, and he hails all the way from Chicago, Illinois. And my brother has been doing a lot of groundwork with the community. He has a journalism background. He's been very heavily involved in the Black Power movement of this generation. Because when we look at what we need to do as a people, when we think about the topics that are needed to be discussed, my brother is definitely there when it comes to this reparations. You saw him at Brother Tariq Nasheed's reparations twice in 2022 and this past summer. So family, this is going to be an action-packed episode. We're going to talk about Chicago roots. We're going to talk about drill music. We're going to talk about the Chicago Black Panther Party and their influence on the young people coming up in this generation. So family, sit back, get ready. My brother Afro Elite, break it down for the people. Tell them a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I started the YouTube channel, which was really about political activism, and then that turned into social things as far as the community is concerned. That was during the George Floyd uprisings, because I saw a lot of people were confused about black on black crime, or the myth of black on black crime, and then what we should do after the protest, and just confused about really the system of white supremacy. So I decided to make a video from my perspective, breaking things down, which led me on a path to creating more content, because I thought that that was something that was going to be helpful. My content creation on YouTube led me into being more journalistic. So that began my journalist career. And then that began my activism career in the city of Chicago and really nationwide. I've been to, as you just established, I've been to DC twice for the Rally for Reparation. Shout out to Tariq Nasheed. I've been to South Carolina to aid Marcel Dixon. Shout out to Marcel with his campaign, his political campaign. I've been to Atlanta multiple times to do other filming and journalistic work down there. But my main base is Chicago, Illinois. So I'm working on things right now in Chicago before the 2024 presidential election. So we're really trying to get the ball rolling as far as to awaken the knowledge of our people to really, I don't really want to use the term woke, but to make people more aware of who we really are and then what we really need to do, and then create an avenue for our people going forward, not just in Chicago, but nationwide.
How did the Black Panther Party of Chicago shape your upbringing?
Well, my parents, they were not Black Panther members, but my parents had always had some level of education about the Black Panther Party in Chicago. My mother was a huge, I would say even more than my father was, she was a huge student, I would say necessarily, of the Black Panther Party, and more so of Malcolm X. And we would discuss what Malcolm's relationship to the Black Panther Party might have been had he not been assassinated by COINTELPRO and the Black Panther Party got disassembled. But my upbringing as far as the Chicago relation, I would say I have always felt a strong connection to the chairman Fred Hampton, due to the fact that he was so young yet so wise and was able to lead certain people. As Chicago, we are known, and there's a big stigma for the gang violence that's going on and the gun crimes that happen in the city. And the fact that Fred Hampton was able to bring different gangs together and different people from different backgrounds and points of view together for a revolutionary cause against the system that is oppressing all of these people, that was something that was very inspirational to me as a youth growing up, even before I really dove really into Black history or the history of the Black Panther Party. This also led me to have a very early understanding of the corruption of the Chicago Police Department as well as the FBI.
Would you say that the Chicago Black Panther Party was a foundation of what we look at today as revolutionaries?
I would say so. I would say so. I think that Chicago, and this isn't to discredit any of the other organizations or any of the other parties. We can both acknowledge the fact that the Black Panther Party originated in Oakland, California. So I don't want to take anything away from our brother Huey and our brother Bobby, but Chicago, I would honestly say, is really like the soul of it, because that's where you saw multiple people who are not from a revolutionary background starting to join that. And I think mainly because of the fact that our organization in the city of Chicago was so profound as far as the work that was being done for the youth. A lot of people talk about the free breakfast program. A lot of people discuss the free breakfast program, but it was much more than just a free breakfast program. It was free breakfast. It was setting up different schooling. It was almost like a schooling center to teach not only the math, reading, and writing, but also to teach about Black history, also to teach about the law, also to teach about who they are as a people. So this was really one of the first cities that said, you know what, instead of getting adults or even young adults, we're actually going to start bringing in the children and having the children have a foundation of their upbringing. So I think that Chicago has a very unique heart as far as the Black Panther movement is concerned, because it really hit the youth as far as their fervor for revolution and their fervor for change and justice. Fred Hampton, when he joined, he was 19 years old. Unfortunately, he didn't live that long, 21 years old, when the Chicago police took him out. But you can tell with that, and Mark Clark, his brother, who was also assassinated that same day. You can tell with his fiance, who unfortunately had to witness what happened to Fred Hampton. You can tell there's a youthfulness, and not to dismiss, because Huey was very young, Bobby was young too, to be very honest. They were all young, but there was a unique youthfulness and unification in Chicago that you didn't really see, or was not really as profound in other areas.
Something also that I wanted to add on to the conversation about the question before that was when you were talking about the influence that the Black Panthers, the influence that Malcolm X had on the Black Panthers. Because something that I found out a couple of weeks ago is that the Black Panther Party was not the original name for the Black Panthers. It was actually called the Sons of Malcolm. So, yeah, so that was just an interesting tidbit that I learned about. And then, just seeing obviously that the revolutionary ways of Malcolm X, you could definitely see how it trickled down into how the Black Panthers did what they did, how they operated, and things of that nature. And even just correlating it back to when we look at the crack era. And because we understand that when that, to me, I believe the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, their main objective was to figure out how they were going to stop the Black Panther Party. And I believe that that's what they did. They created the crack era. Even with Kanye West, when we look at what Kanye West said in his song Crack Music, when he said how they stopped the Black Panthers, Ronald Reagan cooked up an answer. So even when we look at it like that, the way that they stopped the revolutionary, they couldn't stop the revolutionary by just stopping them. They had to do all these other things and try to stop them at every point in their life that they knew that they were going to be able to revolutionize. And then they put us in certain conditions that sometimes we then take substances to alleviate some of the stresses and some of the pain that we're going through and the things that we're seeing as a people. And with the dismantling of the Black Panther Party, we see some of the Panthers might have resulted in, succumbing to some of the things that were being put in front of them. So it's just very interesting how we look at history and we look at all of the atrocities that they've done to us, even after we were quote unquote, freed from the plantation. But then they still always had to figure out a way to still keep us enslaved. So it's just, for what we looked at as history, we think it's a never ending cycle, but it's definitely a cycle that's going to be broken. And I believe brothers like yourself, and especially with this reparations movement, why is reparations so important for us to get passed through legislation?
Okay, and that's a great question. Actually, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for that, and thank you, because I believe the work that you're doing is very important and pivotal to the prosperity and the freedom and justice of our people as well too. So I can't thank you enough. To answer your question, reparations is going to hit to the core because it's going to, first off, give us the esteem. I think that number one, the reason why reparations is so necessary is because it's going to give us the cultural boost and fire necessary for us to continue the mission. I think that enough of us want change. I think most of us want change. If you ask the foundation Black American population, how many of us want change? I think enough of us don't have the fight to back it up because we don't believe in fighting for something that a lot of people don't think is achievable. I think that once you get reparations and give people the tools necessary, give people the opportunity necessary, it will do something to the spirit and the psyche of the people. And then that will start to revolutionize, and that will start to get people to develop other solutions. Even to use the Black Panthers as an example, it was started with two people. Do you think that Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, do you think that those were the only two brothers who had a problem with the police or a problem with the system? But a lot of people didn't have the idea. A lot of people didn't feel like there was enough backup and support behind it. But then once they saw that it was a movement that was actually gaining traction or had some success to it or a possibility of success, then people got on board. But they had always felt that way in their heart. They just need something, an example, so they can get on board for that. It's not because they don't believe it's not possible. So when we have the reparations and we have the tools to let people know that, okay, now it's in our hands now. Our freedom and our justice is not in their hands, and we have to do this thing where we play a game and we act nicely or pick the lesser of two evils, like they always say. Now it's in our hands, and I believe in the psyche of our people, in the heart of our people, when we acknowledge the fact that it's all up to us and it's in our hands, and then with brothers and sisters who are actually doing the work, I think that that will set the good traction and precedent for the rest of the community to get on board. I think that's number one, the psyche. I think number two, the financial aspect to prosperity and freedom. The reason why they're able to target us in such a disproportionate way is because we've been locked out of any type of economic capital, any type of economic prosperity. So, like, for instance, the crack epidemic. The reason why the crack epidemic was so detrimental, well, not the reason, but one of the ways that the crack epidemic was so detrimental and it hit so hard to our community especially, is because when you take resources out, when you burn down businesses in towns like Black Wall Street and you strip people from opportunity, and then you put a drug in the community, the drug is going to spread like wildfire because you've set the conditions for this drug to spread like that. When you have the economic stronghold, you don't have viruses, you don't have an environment where viruses can spread like that. Like for an example, mold mold spreads a lot faster when it's in the dark, in a cold area. It's because that's the environment for it. But when the area is not dark, not wet, it's light, it's clean and everything, it doesn't spread that fast because the environment is different. Different negativities spread faster when the environment suits it. When we have our economic stronghold and we practice powernomics, then we will prevent the environment from being able to be affected by the negativities and the things like the crack epidemic and other things like that. So these are going to be two of the things. And then I will say a third thing is also people like me and you, we can set things up for the next generation, generational wealth. One of the reasons why we have the economic situation that we have now is because, to be honest, most of our parents had to start from scratch. And that's one of the issues with us as foundational Black Americans, is because every time we get something, here they go taking it away through eminent domain, or running a highway through it, or even burning it down, or overtaxing it, and then they strip it away, or mortgage, or whatever the case is. And our people have to essentially keep starting from scratch over and over again, while other communities get to pass down businesses, get to pass down houses, properties, so they get to generate generational wealth, and we're not able to do so. So by us being able to generate generational wealth and gain generational wealth and start passing businesses, corporations, houses, property down to the next generation, it will not just strengthen us, but it will make our children stronger by the time they reach our age.
And I believe that, like you're saying, like having strength in numbers, all of us coming together on a common goal, understanding why reparations is important, and understanding all of those things, and not going for all the things that people try to put up as roadblocks and obstacles, try to say, well, this is why, that is why, because they don't do that for any other group. Any other group that has gotten reparations, it wasn't contingent on this or that. But when it comes to Black folks, there's always something that it has to be based upon this, that. No, it's based upon the fact. And not only did it affect our ancestors, but it trickled down to even the things like what we were just talking about, with the crack era and the crack epidemic, and how that spread like wildfires. And then now how we even have residuals of that, some of the people that were on it and then had children, and then some of the things that we see, and some of the behaviors that have been implemented based upon just the, figuring out ways to experiment. Like, it's always been an experiment when Black people have been in the hood, or the ghetto, as they would call it, and they just try to figure out different ways to subjugate us and put us all in the same way of trying to put us in the same way of thinking, trying to keep us in a box. They have this like connotation with Chicago being like Chirac, because at one point there were more people killed in Chicago allegedly than in Iraq, but that's based off of the numbers that they tell us. But as we know that in the early 2010s, drill music became a very popular genre of rap, and we all know it originated in Chicago. So from your perspective, did growing up in Chicago during the drill rap era affect the work that you do?
I think it did. It did. I will say, initially, coming from Chicago, a lot of people do have I think a different perspective on drill rap than outside. Like, for instance, you're seeing drill rap now becoming a more popular genre of hip hop. A lot of people are associating hip hop with drill rap to a large degree. You're seeing drill rap not even in America. You're seeing it outside of America. You're seeing like UK people, brothers and sisters, doing their version and their variation of drill rap, because it's become such a thing. I think a lot of it, and a lot of people say it's negative. So you have an older generation that would say, okay, this is very negative. And then you have a younger generation that relates to it a little bit more. I think, to me, as a younger person growing up, when it started becoming a thing, it would seem different because it was a newer, more fast-paced way of storytelling. A lot of drill rap has a lot to do with different storytelling aspects, so you can actually see the talent in a lot of these brothers about it. Now, unfortunately, there is negative aspects to it, and this is something that we're not condoning, but as a younger person, you can actually see the talent to it, and you can kind of relate to that to a degree. You can relate to the creativity of that art to that degree. It does shape you in a little bit to have an understanding of the fact that the life out here in Chicago is very difficult. It's a very difficult life, and you are going to have to be ready for it. You are going to have to be prepared for it. You're not going to be able to have the luxury of what they call lacking. You're not going to be able to have the luxury of having your guard down. You're always going to have to keep your head on the swivel to protect yourself. So a lot of people get it from that as well too. And then a lot of people are looking at it from, okay, well, it's kind of fun to be tough. It's kind of fun to be intimidating. A lot of people take that from drill rap as well. They don't really take a lot of that stuff serious. It's the same way a lot of people would say, even though people might say that's negative, I would submit to you that's the same way people take action movies. It's a lot of action movies where you have the white cop and he's shooting up all of the bad guys or whatever the case is. Nobody says that that's negative. A lot of people say, oh, look at him, he's a super Rambo, super macho military guy and with a gun and all that stuff. So a lot of people like a lot of black men, I would say, like the idea of seeing someone who looks like them in a macho position. I will also say one of the reasons why drill rap appeal to a lot of young brothers is because of the fact that in the media, all you saw was weak black men. This is something that they don't really tell you about. You saw either very weak, docile black men, or you saw black men being the villain that needed to be overcame by the black woman. You saw movies like The Color Purple and Precious and the Tyler Perry. This was like right in the peak of the Tyler Perry era, where all of the black men were the villains of the movie that were beating up the black women. So they were the villain that need to be overcame. So this is something that's either making you be the bad guy that is eventually going to lose, or be weak and docile and the eternal child, you know. So this is the only source of media really that a lot of brothers, especially in Chicago, get to see themselves be tough, be somebody who's not just feared, but even respected to a degree.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just from the, the different perspectives, like in the early 90s with NWA, and you had gangster rap. And I feel like what they've done is that they just keep elevating and elevating like what the imagery is pushed. So once, Chief Keef became famous and became, one of the first prominent, artists from Chicago representing the concept of drill rap. And then now we see, like we were talking about, it spread. You see New York drill, and you see Philadelphia drill, and then you see UK drill, even outside of the United States. So it's just spread. And that even also goes back to the fact that everything we do always gets spread and goes across the globe, and everybody is looking for us and what our next move is going to be. So when we make a move, they're always seeing, okay, they making that move, and then they try to emulate. Even though it's never going to be to the capacity that we do, we always see a concept when we see even brothers in Africa. And I think there was a music video where there was a guy, he was dressed up and had the imagery of Tupac. So even when we look at all of the people from the diaspora, it always comes back to the fact that the idolization comes from the Black American figures, the heroes, sheroes, and everything, because we are the real superheroes of our society. We're the ones that are here to save it and make it better. Because, people like Kamala Harris will say she's not going to do anything for Black people because then that will make the world be better. That's the thing about it. White supremacy, even if they have not a white complexion, even if they have a darker skin tone, doesn't necessarily put them in the category. They have to have the ideology of being Black as well. because
Yes.
people will say things and it shows where their mind's at. Because if you're not willing to do anything for Black people, and then if you do something for Black people, because that will benefit the whole world, like Black people getting reparations would benefit the whole world, because us as a people, we'd get ourselves right, and we inadvertently would get everybody else right. So that would make the world better. But those folks that are the high ups don't even want to see people that look like them better. They'd rather have, the lower white, some of the people that we look in the trailer park homes and things of that nature, they even look down upon them. So they don't even look out for their brothers. We have been put in conditions to where we have to fight amongst each other and push each other down just to get ahead. But if we don't have to be in that position, we will help and we will work with one another. We will have a stronger brotherhood. Women will have a stronger sisterhood, and we'll be able to do all of the things that we look at history and renown from our ancestors, and we'll be able to do that in this generation. So I just believe that once all of those things stop and we get on one accord and we get the things that are needed, like reparations, and we get on that same Black code, because that really is key. And then just from that perspective, we'll be able to see all of the things that we want to come to fruition. And just another point of reference I want to make about some of the things that people see in Chicago, and just some of the things that I've seen, and from my perspective, all of the gang violence that we see in Chicago, all of it, and then some of that gang violence, I do believe, is being started by outside forces, whether it's some of the people in police, whether it's some white supremacist groups that let's say they go through a neighborhood, do a shooting. And then to the gang that they did the shooting to, they'll just blame it on, let's say, another gang that's in that neighborhood. And then you start a whole gang and turf war. And then you're able to, add up and all of those numbers to where they're saying, Chicago had the deadliest week. So white supremacy knows that they just got to do a couple things, and then it activates us. And whether it's positive or whether it's negative. And then more so in the negative, they do that and try to implement that on our communities. And I believe that they really, because there's such a focus on, trying to showcase all of the extreme violence that goes on in Chicago, in particular, in comparison to the other states in the U.S., do you believe the violence in Chicago is being started by the youth, or are the police playing a role in stirring up the beef between the young people?
I definitely believe that a lot of this stuff in Chicago is definitely orchestrated. What's interesting is there was a story, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, in 2022, where there was a young white man, who lived like maybe an hour outside of Chicago in like the western suburbs. He came into Chicago and then he went to a park in Inglewood, which is almost like a 100% Black resident neighborhood. It's like 92%, I believe, the last time I checked. He had a lot of guns and stuff like that, and he just started shooting randomly. There was, at the time, it was a thing called Shot Spotter. They was able to detect where the shots were coming from, and he was apprehended. Thankfully, nobody was shot. He didn't hit anybody. He missed everything, but they caught him when he was fleeing. And this is something that happens often, where he'll go in, people will shoot randomly, he'll leave, he'll go back to his suburb, which is what he intended to do. I reported on this story that I gotta pull it back up, but I remember talking about this to home in on the point that this was orchestrated, because he'll go back home, and then in Chicago it's like, okay, well, somebody shot us up, so one gang is gonna think, well, it must be this other gang across the street that did this, or something like that. So now you just put fuel on the fire that might have had attention or anything like that. You've just created a situation that just transpired as well too. Another thing is, a lot of police do things as well too. There was a situation some years ago where there was a police van, a police cruiser, I mean to say, on the west side, and this person who was supposed to be driving it was supposed to be a government agent from the FBI. he goes inside of a gas station. This was like at 3 o'clock in the morning, went inside of a gas station, leaves his police cruiser on, stays in the gas station, and then conveniently somebody takes the cruiser, and there's a whole bunch of assault rifles in the cruiser. It's a whole bunch of vest in the cruiser. It's a lot of different police equipment and things like that. They never recovered any of that stuff. So these are things that the police do, because nowadays they can't just leave crates of guns in an alley anymore, now that everybody has cell phones and everybody has cameras now. So now they come up with different circumstances where they get robbed for their weapons. It was another situation some years ago where there was a train, and in Chicago is a very big distribution center. The state of Illinois is a distribution state. So it was a train full of assault rifles, full of guns, everything like that, not guarded by the police, just conveniently stopped. And then what they said, some gang members conveniently, the whole train robbed that one single cart, and it was full of assault rifles, pistols, shotguns, different vests and things like that they were able to use. Never caught any of that stuff. So what the police often do is the police set up certain things where they know they can get robbed. So these people, they allow these people to get these types of weapons, because these people are not getting these weapons from Indiana, which is what a lot of the people say. These people are not getting that stuff from Indiana and then bringing that back to Chicago. Not largely. A lot of this stuff is being given to the police. There was another situation. I mean, so many situations. There was another situation where 2 police officers were fired because they were exposed for literally selling police equipment to gang members. So these are things that they oftentimes do. They oftentimes sell equipment and things like that to different gang members as well too. As well as the fact that you do have police officers. This was exposed last year, or I think the year before, under Lori Lightfoot's administration, who are a part of white supremacist gangs. There was one that was a part of the Oath Keepers, I believe it is. So what they'll do is they'll go commit a black murder, and they'll like write a little gang signal or something like that on the wall, like, you know, a calling card to a degree for a rival gang. And then when that gang sees it, they see the calling card, and then next thing you know, that they're after the other gang to avenge one of their members. This is something that they do to keep the beef going. So a lot of this stuff is orchestrated.
We as a people will continue doing what it needs to do till we get to where we need to be. So that just definitely puts it in perspective that I definitely appreciate what you're doing, my brother. Keep on keeping on with everything that you're doing. And let the people know, is there any last gems that you would like to tell the people?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for having me. I want to thank you for reaching out and being so very patient with the schedule so we can have this, because I think that this was a very productive and inspiring conversation. So I'm very grateful to be a part of it. I'm going to say, any final gems is I will want to leave the people with the fact that with these conversations and with this mind frame, because the solution really is to get the mind in your mentality. That's going to determine your actions. Your thoughts determine what you say determines what you do. That's the order in which the human being works. You have to think of something and feel something first. So when you, like you were just explaining, when you look at certain things from a different perspective, because a lot of people will look at, for instance, the Bloods and the Crips like, okay, well, that's just gang violence. That's what they call black on black crime. But then when you take the context, and I think that these conversations are really good for that, because when you take the context into account that, well, actually, a lot of the Bloods and the Crips and a lot of these gangs derived from something that was productive, from something that was positive for the community, but through infiltration and through like you said, infiltration and organized white supremacy and COINTELPRO, it became something negative. So when you put that into context, you start to see the situation different. How you see the situation different in your community, that's going to reflect on how you see yourself. One of the main things I say is you have to not just view the situation in its proper perspective, you have to view your entire people, the good and the bad, in its proper perspective. And I'm not anyone to say that Black people cannot do any better. I'm not going to say that we don't have room to improve, but if we put it in its proper perspective, then we can actually develop the solutions. Because when you put that your community in its proper perspective, then you start to reflect on yourself in a more honest way. You start to view yourself in a better way, and then that's going to determine how you think about yourself, and then what you do to solve the problems in your life for yourself and your family, and as well as the problems for the community at whole. So I think that looking at things from the proper perspective, in the right context, when you have the historical context and the facts behind it, that is going to determine how you view things and then what you do about those things.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, my brother, is there any way that if people like to get in contact with you, your Instagram, is there any websites, anything that you could let the people know that they can continue following the great work that you're doing?
Oh, yes. Well, it's the main platform that I'm on is YouTube. That is Afro Elite on YouTube. And then I do have Instagram. That's Afro Elite on Instagram. Twitter, or X, is the Afro Elite. And then a lot of people have sent me different messages and things like that, as far as maybe business proposals or ideas or videos they'd like to get my opinion on. And if you want to send me an email or anything, or if you wanted to do a collab, if you don't have social media or anything, it's afroelite10@gmail.com. I'm developing a website and everything, but as far as reaching me, you can easily reach me through either of those things, email or via social media.
Most definitely. So, family, hit my brother up, because my brother is definitely a journalist. He's actually on the grounds. Now, we know that a lot of people, they just report the news behind the screen, but they don't actually be on the grounds to actually be with the people. Brothers like Afro Elite, he's actually on the ground. So, family, if you want that realness, hit our brother up, because we're trying to build a network, family. We're trying to bring back building a network of brotherhood for the sisters, a sisterhood, and we come together as brothers and sisters. We do what needs to get done, and I believe that we're doing that right now, and we're just going to continue. The grind never stops, because our people are just that great. So, family, I appreciate your time. My brother Afro Elite, I definitely appreciate your time once again. Definitely keep on keeping on with everything that you're doing, because it's definitely you're definitely an asset in the community as it relates to, we know that the information that you're giving us is real, because you're actually really on the ground. This is real grassroots groundwork. So I definitely appreciate you from that perspective deeply. So, my brother, once again, I appreciate your time. There's been another wonderful episode of Power to the Panthers podcast. And like we usually do at this time, family, Huey, take us away.
We're used, we're brutalized. The police in our community occupy our area, our community, as a foreign troop occupies territory. And the police are there not to, in our community, not to promote our welfare or for our security and our safety, but they're there to contain us, to brutalize us and murder us, because they have their orders to do so.
Thanks for watching. This episode of Power to the Panthers podcast has been brought to you by Panther Prince Productions.